participations.
All right. Well, we're going to open it for questions. This is on the record. In addition to the very full room we have here, we've got about over 400 people, 400 CFR members online as well. Please, if recognized, stand up, wait for the microphone, identify yourself, and ask a brief question. Okay? Yes, this gentleman right here.
George Vredenberg of the Davos Alzheimer's Collaborative, a successor to Seppi and Gavi, but focused on aging populations. So my question is a demographic question. Working age populations in Europe are shrinking.
Yeah.
You know, working age populations are supporting a larger population overall. How does one deal with the financial costs of that? How does one deal with how to increase worker productivity in the global north?
Are you taking a few, or do you want me to do? Look, absolutely right. One of the biggest challenges, I think one of the first things you have to do as a government, we haven't fully done this, but we will in time, is to actually frame the policy and frame. Australia does this with their intergenerational reports, basically, which frames under current trajectories and with demographics what the challenges are. That's the first. The second is you maximize your labor force participation as much, female participation, older participation. We are pretty good on that. We have a bit more to do later in career, and for all countries, that's the next step. Clearly, the deployment of technology, AI coming in. It's not like AI is going to solve everything, but that the multiplier effects there gotten right. There's a variety of reasons why we have to get application of AI right across our economies. This is one of them, and it provides some counterweight to that, and potentially substantial counter. I mean, okay, I'll be utopian, not utopian, but optimistic. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to say Panglossian, but then I was like, that's so optimistic. But if you take sort of full bore productivity estimates on AI application, it's adding 1 to 1.5 percentage points on productivity by and I'll push it out to the middle of the next decade. It actually dovetails pretty well with that bigger demographic crunch. I mean, those are big numbers in annual productivity. So we have to get that right. And one of the challenges for us, of course, is to do that alongside everyone else. Yeah.
Maureen White. Microphone coming. Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you, Mark, for being with us today. I'm Maureen White, and I'm a senior fellow at the Foreign Policy Institute at SAIS, and I'm also chairman of the Board of Refugees International. And Mark, Canada has had an exemplary role in refugee resettlement for many, many years. And I know your country, and you're not alone in this, is backtracking a little bit on this commitment to refugee assistance. Could you just elaborate a little bit on what the Canadian policy on refugee resettlement will be going forward?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not, Maureen, now that they've taken the microphone away from you, I'm not sure I fully recognize the backtracking element of your question. And you know, I'll put it in context. I see the Ukraine pin on the previous questioner, and salute you for it. We've taken 300,000 Ukrainian families into Canada, individuals, I should say, individuals into Canada. We still have quite substantial levels of asylum seekers, and you know, the Ukrainian case is a humanitarian, deliberate policy. The asylum seeker obviously is received. We, like every country, must control and be deliberate with respect to our borders, and manage appropriately. And so the government is very focused on doing that on the border side, but also treating asylum seekers, treating everyone who comes to Canada to the standards they should, and that includes processing claims in a timely fashion. And one thing we have not done well enough is process claims in a timely fashion. So that's resources and efficiency. And so I would say when we look at, that's the aspect of your question that I would bear down on. Yeah.
Let's get to an online question.
Okay.
We will take the virtual question from Missy Ryan.
Hi, this is Missy Ryan from The Atlantic Magazine. I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about what you mentioned earlier several times about Canada's values-based approach to international relations and as a sort of guiding compass more generally, and how you're thinking about doing that in a moment where the Trump administration is not talking about a values-based foreign policy, and more the America First is, as it's articulated, is more about American interests and sometimes backing away from some of the values that have been articulated by the United States and its foreign policies. How are you going to do that, especially given the United States' clout as a kind of trendsetter on certain issues like the Palestinian state and Ukraine, Russia, and all of that?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Missy. Look, I'll give a couple of examples and then pick up on your. Let me pick up on Palestinian state, Ukraine. There are other examples of this where, look, we believe in the UN Charter. We believe in self-determination for peoples. We underscore the importance of territorial integrity. And that drives our approach in Ukraine. It drives our approach in Palestine as well. There are other applications, but I'll stop there. That's a consistent approach. We welcome, and I very much welcome his personal involvement of the president in efforts, for example, in Ukraine to broker ceasefires, to find paths for peace, to provide potentially complements to the security guarantees that the Coalition of the Willing, Canada included, are prepared to provide to Ukraine, which is necessary for a lasting peace or lasting security for Ukraine. The situation, this is no insight, the situation in Palestine is both horrific and fluid. And there are multiple efforts, very much including by the United States, to find a path to cessation of hostilities, ultimately security and some form of peace. We come at both those situations from a somewhat different perspective, but the same ultimate goal. And we have different partners at present in some of the initiatives, in both of those initiatives. But we would hope that there would be convergence with the United States. And we will certainly support leadership of the United States that's leading to outcomes that are consistent with our values.
Some European countries have suggested they would deploy troops to Ukraine as part of a stability force or peacekeeping force. Would Canada be among those?
Well, we'll see what the structure is. We're very active in the Coalition of Willing. I'd remind that we have very large troop presence in Latvia as part of our NATO obligations. I visited them 3 weeks ago. And to underscore the commitment to security in the region, to Latvia and Poland. By the way, the brigades in Latvia, it is not, they don't do training. It's an operational brigade, which gives you, and that's before the incursions, the Russian incursions of recent weeks. And that gives you a sense of both the stakes and the degree of our commitment. So we'll see in terms of Ukraine. There's a lot to be done still to move that first to a cessation of hostility before the guarantees would come into effect. But what we do know, and the United States acknowledges very much, is that given the track record of Putin, a security guarantee that's written on paper is not, that if the signature is Vladimir Putin's, is not worth anything.
It's right here in the second row. Lou? microphone coming up. There you go.
Thank you, Allison Sander, Planet Action. First of all, just want to start with a thank you for those of us who forget what leadership and diplomacy looks like. We follow you, and it reminds us, and I think I'm speaking for the whole room. So start with that. A quick question. I think it's Canadian modesty that you describe yourself as a middle power. I'd kind of bump you up. And could you paint us a picture in these times where IP, capital, and talent can flow so easily? You're a great strategist. What's the strategy for middle powers to use golden parachutes, different tax laws? And is there a coordinated strategy to just take some of the capital from here that's getting frustrated and attract it?
Well, we would never take anything from the United States. To be clear,
That's on the record.
That's on the record. I just want to underscore that we're here to give, not take,
Just not give too much.
Not give too much, exactly. No, like on the, I mean, I think this is our strategy. Our core of the strategy is the core. Like it's like any organization, yours included. Like the core of the strategy has to be consistent with who you are and what your values are, and then you build off of that. So I said in my remarks, the public square is loud, diverse, and free. That's important. It's important to Canadians, but it's important. It's becoming more of a relative thing than it had been in the past. Let's put it that way. The second is the country is, it is a very diverse country. It is a very networked country globally. Toronto, New York, it's impressive. It's one of 3 born outside of the U.S. I think it's one of 2 in Toronto. Okay, and it's not. That is a more extreme version, but many Canadian cities look like New York, not in scale, but in diversity. And that is a strength that's there as well. From a tax perspective, I don't think you'll see in Canada, Swiss-type tax deals for individuals. That's not the nature of the society. There is a social model that's consistent. But what is there is those first 2 components combined with very strong research universities that people can come to, a society when people can live in, and a country that is connected to everywhere else in the world, including through trade and investment. And that's something that we will push through, combined with, which is something that isn't always there in Canada, or at least shouted out, which is ambition, and the scale of the ambition. And that's part of how people go to where things are happening or where they think they can be part of something bigger, and that's an important part of the strategy. Yeah. Thank you.
Jane Harman. Front row here.
Jane, how are you?
Jane Harman, former member of Congress. Congratulations to CFR and Canada for superb leadership, which employs delightful humor. It's really refreshing. My question is more about Ukraine. You've answered lots of it, but putting on your banker hat, there has been a bill in the United States Congress for a while, sponsored by Lindsey Graham and Richard Blumenthal, to impose secondary sanctions on Russia to force Putin to change his strategy. That bill isn't passing because Trump does not yet support it, despite a veto-proof majority. But my question is, how potent are secondary sanctions, and should this bill pass, how much difference do you think it would make?
Well, and great to see you, Jane. Secondary sanctions can be incredibly powerful, and they were very, very powerful with respect to Iran, and the uncertainty around the extent to which what is secondary, if I can put it that way, particularly in the financial sector, is a powerful weapon. So just for those who don't follow it, it's not just what bank, so to speak, deals directly, in this case, with Russia, but does your bank deal with the bank that deals with Russia? So who's your client's client? And once you start asking that question, the risk really does pull in and the isolation goes up orders of magnitude. The Graham-Blumenthal bill, as I remember, doesn't deal directly with the financial side. It's more of a tariff or trade related. Is that correct, or am I misremembering? You think it has that financial? I think if it has the financial, I think that is power. It is something we have advocated. Canada has advocated. I've personally advocated in some of the discussions, and I will say that the U.S. has raised this issue on several occasions as a possibility. I think it is a possibility. I'm not saying the legislation per se, but the use of secondary sanctions. And our view, Canada's view, and a number of European countries would share this, is that we should go quickly to that because that really is the biggest non-military disincentive. So I'm glad you raised it, but yes.
Putting your former banker hat on, central banker hat on, would you worry about the impact of secondary sanctions on the role of the dollar going forward in terms of weaponization of finance?
Look, I think this is less. No. I mean, yes, I understand the motivation of the question, but I think these would be very clear, well-motivated reasons, and it would be coming in. You would delay delivery it. You'd say we're going to do it in 2 months or 3 months' time to effectively force Putin to the trilateral table, and it would give time to reorganize relationships accordingly. You always have a risk, as you know, when you do financial sanctions in terms of the impact on the dollar. But it is also this is the thing that needs to be hammered home. It is so difficult to transact even in other currencies with ultimately the chain one step removed, not touching a U.S. person, financial institution, the dollar. That's what gives this such power.
You support using the frozen Russian assets?
You know,
now
when I was a central banker, I didn't, but now that where you stand depends on where you sit.
Where you stand depends on where you sit.
Exactly.
Let's go to an online question.
I'm much more enlightened
We will
now.
We will take the next virtual question from Mark Rosen.
Prime Minister, yesterday, in recognizing a Palestinian state, you set out a demand that Hamas must be disarmed and excluded from any Palestinian government or elections. Can you explain to us who, if not Israel, will carry out that disarmament of Hamas? How will that happen? And if seems highly possible, at least, a movement or political party committed to Israel's destruction, whether under the Hamas name or another banner, ultimately wins those Palestinian elections you've called for next year, won't you have in effect granted Hamas their own state to launch more invasions of Israel?
Thanks for the question. First is the disarmament and elimination of Hamas as a force, certainly as a political force, military force first, and political force, is one of the conditions for a sustained cessation of hostilities and peace. And when you say who is going to do that, there are many proposals, as I suspect you're aware, from a variety of Arab states, combination of Arab states and European states, to which Canada would be party if they were to come to pass, for multinational forces to be deployed in Palestine to enforce a peace and to drive that process forward. So I think the first part of your question I deal with directly that way. The conditions for a free and fair election in Palestine are many, and the time in order to get to that spot is uncertain. The conditions for any form of self-determination of the Palestinian people do not exist at present. And the prospect of them ever being in a position to make decisions in their own land, it is the avowed policy of the current Israeli government to ensure that never happens.
Yes, way in the back.
Thank you. Keith A. Bell, Next Experiences, producer of New York Fashion Week and LA Fashion Week.
Wow. You're in the right
section. I know. Two sons at the University of Toronto, getting a fine education. Thank you.
Good.
One of them is a data science major and determined to start up his own company and feels compelled, although he loves Canada, is Canadian, would stay up there if he could. But Canada really doesn't have the opportunities that Silicon Valley offers. You know, your joke about immigration policy in the United States aside, isn't that a problem? Why drive your brilliant young Canadians to the United States because the capital markets doesn't have the category of capital to support their new ideas? And is there a solution?
Yeah, I think the first thing, thanks for the question. Thanks for sending your kids back home. If that's right. And I would flip it a bit in that how much are we driving people to Silicon Valley and how much is Silicon Valley and Seattle, for that matter, sucking in and attracting, and I don't mean that in negative, but just the sheer weight of the opportunity in the United States. And this is true whether you're Canadian, Israeli, European, Indian, you know, this is not a unique phenomena to Canada. You know, 50% of probably one of the best, I'll hedge, places to do computer engineering, all forms of it, is Waterloo. 50% of the graduating class every year goes to the United States. And we need to retain more of those. Part of it is the ecosystem, the venture capital ecosystem. I actually don't think that's to be honest, I don't think that's the biggest thing. I'm not saying there are things that we shouldn't be doing there. I think it's, in part, it's the demand. Part of it is the demand for the end product. So the ability to scale in Canada is more limited, has been more limited for a variety of reasons. Part of it, our companies aren't applying things as much as U.S. ones. A lot of that is going to change in AI, crypto, cryptography. Cryptography is when I say crypto, I don't mean crypto, and in quantum, because we're gonna drive a lot of that, and spin-offs of that. Doesn't mean we'll keep everybody, but we'll keep more.
I mean, the president just had an interesting visit to the UK.
Yeah.
And signed this major technology agreement. UK is going to get hundreds of billions of dollars potentially of investment into their AI infrastructure. Could Canada cut a similar deal with the United States? Yeah,
we could cut. We would like to cut a similar deal. The extent to which it needs to be done with the U.S. government it's not clear to me. It has to be done with the U.S. government. I'm happy them to come. But we've got. So what do you need? What do you need for an AI data center? You need power. You need chips, and more often clean power is preferred. You need chips. Wouldn't hurt to have a fiber optic cable that went down to the U.S. Proximity doesn't hurt. And so that strategy of building out the infrastructure that the UK, France, others are pursuing, that makes sense. That makes sense for us. And we've got to make sure that some of our power, those big chunks of power that are coming online, are there. For the overall benefit for Canada, it goes to the previous question and the productivity discussion. That's nice, getting that infrastructure. The big payoff is actually in the application, which means that you want to flow through some of that capacity for Canadian companies, Canadian usage, and actually the education side becomes that much more important.
There's another question way Oh, right there. About 2/3 of the way back. Yep, gentleman looking back. There you go.
Hi, Andrew Watrous, Morgan Stanley. Mr. Prime Minister, congratulations on passage of the One Canadian Economy Act this summer.
Congratulations on referencing it. Thank you. This is very good.
I wonder if you could say a few more words and give us a few more details on the projects that you're planning to fast track through the approval authorities. What are the size of those projects? When might they be approved and shovel ready? And when might we start seeing those show up in GDP? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. So we're going to layer these approvals roughly every 4 months for the course of the next couple of years. We have a series of them that were initially proposed. Canada's a federation. Part of the way we have to get things moving. Parliament gave the government additional powers to fast track approvals, so 2-year time horizon. And once we designate a project, it's presumed approved. Okay, so something has to kind of go off in order for it not to happen, which means that a lot of the engineering and other work can drive through. But part of the way to get things done in Canada, I mentioned this in my remarks, is through partnerships. So we started with the provinces saying, what are your top priorities? And they've given us a bunch of their top priorities. Indigenous peoples, Indigenous rights holders, what are some of their top priorities? Bringing those together and making sure that those are front of the line, front of the queue. What you're going to see is a series of things and you're starting to see them in and around critical minerals, in and around energy, particular, a mixture of conventional and clean. We just greenlit with BC, for example, one of the largest, one of the largest LNG projects, Silicon, which follows hard on the heels of LNG 1 and potentially LNG 2, which is this giant consortium. Those are just to give a sense of sort of blocks. These are effectively zero carbon LNG because the liquefaction is before the scope 3, obviously, I'll say that, under the control of planet Earth, right? But the liquefaction is done with hydro, very short shipping times to Asia, tons of demand, displaces coal, lots of good things about that. You will see a lot of those types of projects, but in parallel with scale nuclear in Ontario, where the actual FID decisions and the capital is starting to flow, large-scale hydro, 10,000 to 15,000 megawatt hydro in East, and then big corridors and critical minerals that are opened up. Last thing, sorry, this is too long an answer, but the AI infrastructure leg of that strategy is just being developed. We referenced it a few weeks ago around a sovereign cloud because we know that we're the offtake for that, development for that, and you'll see something on that in the next few months.
You've contributed so much to the United States, the UK, the globe, when it comes to climate change, and now you're bringing it back to Canada. We are so privileged to have you here. Thank you for spending time with us.
Thank you.